We're ready.
I'm going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order on the 12th of November at about 5:34. But before we go any further, let's pause, if you will, just a few moments for Ms. Wilson's family and her loss of her husband. And let's raise them in our prayers, because we never know the time, the place, the how, when. And so let's just, for a moment, in our own way, raise them up in prayer. Thank you. Okay. We want to adopt the agenda for this date and time. If there's a motion to do so.
Yes, sir. Brooks, I move that we adopt the agenda as printed.
I second it, and no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so ordered. And the approval of the minutes of our October 8th committee meeting. Have you had a chance to review those?
Yes, I have.
And is there a motion to adopt the minutes of the October 8th meeting?
I move that we adopt the October 8, 2019 minutes as printed.
And I second that motion, and all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now we want the financial update, and who's going to do that?
You-
Financial update?
We're not gonna have one at this time, I don't believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
In the absence of Ms. Wilson.
All right, let's go then to the request for action relative to the approval of a new and Soliant contract.
Alliance contract.
Okay.
I put a copy in front of you, if you have it.
Yes.
This is, the school district right now has 5 students in grades K through 5 and 3 students in 9 through 12 that qualify for vision services, as documented in IEPs. We've worked with Soliant, they're healthcare professionals, that they help with our staffing needs, especially in this area. In fact, this is the only contract we have with Soliant is for vision services. Last year, our person that we had for several years, basically since the 14-15 school year, we've been working with him. He retired, and we have been working diligently trying to find somebody, and we finally did find somebody now, so that we can enter into a contract for the remaining part of the school year. This would be ensuring that all the children's needs are met, because right now we have not been meeting our IEPs according to law. This agreement is going to be basically the person would be paid $81 per hour. This is $1 more than the last year's contract. Last year was $80. And this contract is for 25 hours per week. Last year's contract was for 15 hours, but again, we're making up for lost time. Plus, this person has extra certification that is hard to find. This person is going to be able to take our students into the community and teach them how to navigate through the community. Our last person didn't have that certification and could not take them. So this is very crucial to making sure our students not only meet their needs in their IEP, they're basically going to be able to be successful in life later on. This ties into our second pillar, our schools, focusing on a safe and supportive climate. And so basically we would like permission to move this to the consent agenda for Thursday night.
Tell us, what do we mean when you say, I think I know what you mean, you say maneuver through the community.
You know, take them out to, like for instance, the roads, to tell them how to cross the street safely, how to navigate in shopping centers and so forth. They have a special degree that we've not had from anybody else. Well, I say from anybody else. We only had the one gentleman from Soliant that we've had, and he didn't have that. This person does have extra degree or certification.
And this person with the same company that we had.
Yes, it is from Soliant. We've been with them since 14-15. But again, his name, I don't know if I can say his name, it's public forum, but he basically retired at the end of school last year, and they did not have anybody for us. We've been meeting with them on a regular basis. They've been looking for somebody that would fulfill the contract, and they finally found somebody. So if we approve this contract, if the board approves this contract, this person would start immediately once approved.
There are certain certifications that person who fulfills this scope of service has to have.
Yes, and we don't have anybody in the district with it.
Okay. Any questions?
No, you just paying $1 more?
more per hour.
with better services.
Yes.
Same
So-
amount of hours per week, was the
Well,
same?
well, again, the hours per week did go up because we have a lot to make up for. Instead of, last year's contract was for 15 hours, this one's for 25.
When you say we have a lot to make up for.
Because right now, we've not fulfilled those services in our IEP. We've kind of made sure we do the best we can with the personnel that we have, but technically, we've not been meeting our IEP, so we have to go back and make up for the hours from the beginning of the school year.
Okay.
Alright. Do we need a motion to put this on the consent?
I move that we put the renewal of the Solon contract on the consent item for full board approval.
Okay, I second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Alright, okay. Request board action relative to the approval of the 2019 tax anticipation note.
Director Brooks, I would, ask if we could just jump to 5.3 so that Director Watry is here to
Okay,
participate in that.
5.3. Okay, that's it there.
Okay, this went before the facilities committee, last week. And, was approved during that process. As you'll remember, back in 2000, we had structural needs in Baptiste. We had the engineers from Smith and Boucher come out and take a look at the building, the entire building, not just the campus side, but the entire building. During that time frame, they found some structural repairs that needed to be performed. The original bid we put out in the fall of 2018, if you'll remember, the ad hoc group of facility met at that time. We also took it to finance on December 4th of 2018. At that time, we were going through the shaping our future, and we decided to kind of hold off for a year, unknowing what some of the finances, things that were going on. As we talked back at that time, we promised ourselves that we'd come back this fall and do it again, and put out those bids. We put out those bids, and I'll bring them back to you now. We actually put them out twice. First time we put them out to bid, no one bid on it. And if you'll remember, last year only 2 companies bid on it last year. I recalled those 2 companies and said, hey, we got these bids coming out. Only one of those 2 bid on the second time we put it out, which was MTS, which is also the same company that did the Ruskin repairs. So they're very familiar with the process and what the repairs are that need to be performed. We had also talked about then and now, we talked about in facilities that we would split the cost of this repair. The overall cost is $118,000. We decided that we would fix the bottom floor of this fiscal year and then pay for it this fiscal year. So in the next 4 to 5 months, we'd do the repairs. And then we would actually do the second repairs on the top floor in the summertime and put it on next year's budget to split that cost of the $118,000, although getting it all done within the next 8 to 10 months. So get it done within the year, but split it between 2 financial years due to the cost of it all. So the estimated cost for bottom floor, which is the floor with the most issues, is $82,006, and the top floor is $35,400. Those numbers could fluctuate a little bit, but won't go over 118. So, questions that you might have?
Any questions?
I'm just waiting to.
Go ahead.
How are you?
Oh, okay. You have a question?
Yeah, I know that this needs to be done because we've been monitoring this for a long time, but for the life of me, I can't understand why the structure was not evaluated prior to all the construction we've done on these properties. And Ruskin and Baptiste, typically, hopefully as we move forward as a governing board and a responsible district, that we make sure that we follow, I think, some better processes so that the structural piece on any project that we do is assessed prior to any new additions or anything being built or remodeled onto it. For us to go back and have to do this over and over again, it's sucking the life out the district.
Yeah, so when we go through that bond process of picking projects, we've got to be very deliberate about what's behind walls that we're talking about, or what's in the roof that we're talking about, whatever it happens to be. So we do need to be very deliberate about that process once we decide what those projects are.
Well, explain a little more what you mean by when.
Well, civil engineers, I mean, and Mr. Weekly can give you an update on it, Baptiste and Ruskin are two of our properties that suffer a lot of structural issues. We've built a new addition onto Ruskin, and we're dealing with structural issues at Ruskin, same here with Baptiste. And so, I don't know when or where or how, why it wasn't done prior to the construction process, but it wasn't done, and we're going back to rectify some of those assessments on our properties.
And was it a part of the evaluation when it was done?
I wouldn't hear then, but Dr. Myers was here then, and my assumption is that they, I assume that they did some of that. I don't know the extent of that. You know, I was here on the part where we were trying to fix it, so I know the story I heard is that as they were going through some of the process of adding the addition and the renovation of this building, tearing the walls down and tearing the ceiling down, they discovered some of the structural issues in both buildings. So that's about the time I came in, is after that fact, and so then we went about repairing those. So I'm not sure about what assessment went on prior to construction. I know that we will do one. It's going to be an essential part, whatever those projects are, whether it even be ground services. If we dig up ground, we got to do what's underneath. We got to do core samples. Anytime you do that kind of stuff, you got to have as much information as you possibly can get. So, and there's always going to be unforeseens. I mean, let's be honest, it's going to happen. But these were pretty significant.
So more or less taking a more proactive approach on ensuring that we.
Yeah. What's behind the scenes. A little bit. I think, and it really does depend on the project. I mean, if it's HVAC, we know we're going to have really examine our roofs. What's that look like? And if we're going to have new penetrations or use the same penetrations and curvings, and so that's going to be really essential in that process. So if that's one of them, then that's something we really got to look at. Integrity of the roof. So.
Any further discussion? There's a motion to.
I just have one other thing, in addition to the assessment of the HVAC and the mechanicals, we have to do with those units to ensure that it's not in close proximity of where our children play. Would also be critical.
Yeah, in fact, I think that may be the only facility that's like that. In fact, I know it is. So.
Make sure. Well, you call upon it, everyone. Dr. Woods, I move that we accept the structural repairs for Baptiste.
Okay, second.
I say.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay, so.
Is this a consent item, or would this go before the full board?
It should be.
It needs to go to consent item.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And what's the timetable on this or something like that?
Well, the bottom floor, we're gonna do Christmas, spring break. We're gonna try to do times when kids aren't there. I think we'll be able to get that bottom floor done with Christmas, spring break, and some of those other breaks that we have. So they'll work weekends, nights. And there's no overtime. It's just whenever they need to get in here. So it'll be odd hours. I told him that go ahead and schedule us for Christmas and spring break, and then we'll talk about what else they think they might need. But I'll report back to our facilities committee and keep them updated on progress.
I do have one other question, it just dawned on me, sorry. Do you have the funds in your working budget to take care of this?
Yeah, this is gonna come through my budget, when I'm talking about capital site improvements.
Okay.
Yeah, so this will come directly through my budget, which I budgeted for, so.
Okay, all right, then we want to go back now to 5.2, whatever, note the approval of 2019 tax anticipation note.
Yes, who's presenting that?
Okay.
I thought you were going to present it and I'd chime in, but basically on this particular item, the district is in need of a tax anticipation note for the month of December to help us pay bills and payroll prior to the receipt of our Jackson County payment for the 2019 taxes. And we did this last year. If you recall, we did a $3 million tax anticipation note, and we paid it back in January. And the need this year is a little bit more. It's $3.5 million, with anticipation to get it so we can pay all our bills and then pay back in January as well.
What does it cost us for those 90 days?
It says the estimated cost for this loan for the 1 month period is $9,722. That's an interest rate of 3.25 through UMB.
We have that.
I'm sorry, I
We
don't
don't have
print
it
extra
here.
copies of
We
this,
don't have it in this.
so I can give you this copy. I mean, I can look at it online if you need to.
I'll pass it around here. Go ahead. You have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. So, the district goal is to have a community fund balance for the 19-20 school year, 15%.
Well, it's slightly under 15
It's gonna
right
be
now.
slightly, I understand it's gonna be slightly under 15%. Explain to me just a little bit why we need a loan if we are anticipating ending our budget at a little bit less than 14%. Why do we need a $4 million, or just about a $4 million loan?
A $3.5 million
Yeah, that's
loan.
$4 million.
I mean, it's just the timeliness of the payments. We won't have it in time to pay the payroll if we don't get this now. This ensures that we'll make sure that we'll have all our payments for the month of December. And again, it's paid right around, and turnaround is, we get them very end, and I believe it's because, and again, I'm not 100% sure, because I hadn't had a chance to talk to Sheldon prior to this, but I believe it's we get those payments at the end after everybody's already gone, and so we have to get everything at the very last minute. And like I said, it is gonna be just payment turned right around. We get it, pay it off in January, just like we did last year. And the difference, I don't know, can't explain it a little bit further than that, to be honest. Do you know, Mr. Fatmire?
Well, I kind of asked the same question today around the EOT table. Because my understanding was that as long as we're around 9–10%, that we shouldn't have to take it. So the explanation was that we're not at that 14.5 right now. So where we ended the fund balance last year, I believe, was 8 or 9%. Yeah. So where we're at this point in the school year, there isn't that cushion that we don't have to do the loan. The goal is that we're at that 14 point, whatever, by the end of this year, once the payments come through, but right now, we're not close enough to the 14. So I had the same wondering President Briggs today too.
So, it's gonna cost us for that period of
About
time.
$9,700 to borrow the 3.5.
0.03%.
If we went into our fund balance and just played it back to the fund balance, would it cost anything? Would it?
It's not there.
Well,
So eventually, it will-
if we know we got the money coming,
It's not gonna come in time.
so essentially, it
we
will,
said not gonna come in time.
for the next fund
It's not
balance.
gonna come in time for our next, deposit from our city, state, all the taxes and stuff that we receive. So the question is, where will we be sitting at the end of November to make December bills? One of the things that, I understand what's necessary, I do. But at some point, I believe that, as I said last year, being part of the finance committee then, it's not a good position to be borrowing money in December to November to pay your December bills and turn around and pay it back. That's just not good business. As a responsible district, as we continue to right size and restructure this district and to stabilize, we have to make sure we have enough reserves going into November and December and January, whether it's a $9,000 percentage that a bill that we're paying. To me, $9,000 is $9,500 contributed to a makerspace that can improve a makerspace for our students. Right now, we're doing those with significantly less money. And so I just ask that the board continues to stabilizing our fund balance a priority, period. I mean,
I guess the question, but I'm certain, totally agree with you there. I'm wondering what can be recommended to us that next year we're not in the same situation.
What's the proactive stance that we can take in regards to this? Yeah.
Right.
would you like me to answer that question, okay?
Well,
Yeah.
no.
Hello, Walls. Well, you know, as I've expressed to Dr. Cargill, and she's sent her, you know, she's expressed her concerns, yes, we should have closed more than 3 schools.
Oh, yeah.
But was that the best thing at the time? You know, we all have our own opinions. But at the end of the day, at some point, I'm not sure if that's not going to be off the table or back on the table if we continue to borrow money and don't increase our student enrollment and continue to have maintenance, important maintenance issues for our district.
It certainly doesn't make us look good that each year we have to do this, and when we're trying to increase our fund balance, and you can't do it borrowing from Peter to pay Paul and never pay Peter back. Well,
So in the aspect of taking a more proactive stance, with us not having, with us closing the schools this last year, which is essentially timeline standing, what led us in this predicament again, in the sense that we stay above, let's say, the projected fund balance is where we are now. This what, $9,722 is what, at least point two, point
I think it was
0.02.
3.25.
Yeah. On how it'll affect the fund balance, I think the thing is to be able to be cognizant of this particular situation in November that does take place, that as we go on for the following year, not closing any schools, hopefully, the aspect is that we will be able to have a little bit more of a proactive approach about this, especially as the school year begins. It needs to be something we discuss not now, but at the beginning of the year, knowing that this has occurred twice.
Yeah. And with that being said, I'm glad that you said it, Director Watry, because this typically should have been brought to the Finance Committee about 90 days ago.
That way we could have taken a more
Yes.
proactive stance on it. And it could have changed some of the decisions that we've made in the basis of how our decisions have affected the fund balance since the beginning of the school year, and the things that we've tacked on as well.
I say that starting maybe in this committee needs to, with Ms. Wilson and others, superintendent, if we can probably project that we're gonna be in the same situation next year, and so what do we do to keep from being in this situation next year?
The discussion needs to be had starting in June and July.
Yeah.
About this and our actual numbers and for budgetary reasons. So I would ask Dr. Skinner that we make sure that this is on a calendar. I believe.
I'm making
notes, yeah, that this is discussed
that if
in
this
June.
comes up again, it comes up at least 90 days early.
It should be about 120 in all fairness to the board. I do know that we did discuss this important item being brought before the board I know that some board members are probably gonna be in a tizzy about this. Not having enough time to talk about it and kind of process it, so I would just ask that it's on somebody's radar and our radar by June of 2020.
And I don't think we ought to take off the table based on what we've seen in terms of increase, still a decrease in student population. We may have to look at the schools, that whole thing of schools again. I mean, I don't think we can take anything off the table.
I don't think we're in a place where anything is off the table. I think just more in the aspect of we're projecting our fund balance, we need to also be able to project what is going to affect our fund balance, that we don't have to act like this requires our action now, right?
Right.
So just in the aspect of being able to have a little bit of foresight in situations like this, because like I said, in the last couple of meetings the board has made decisions on allocating some of our funds, and we have made decisions that have been brought to us regarding the recommendation of the superintendent or the ELT team that would affect the fund balance. But we just need to take a little bit more of a proactive approach. That's all.
Any further discussion? If not, if there's a motion to approve the
All right.
5.2.
I will motion to approve 5.2, the approval of the 2019 tax anticipation note.
Second.
I'm gonna second it, but please, I would like to allow the board an opportunity to, have some input on this.
Okay.
Can I do, on this for clarification, so you wanna move this to the 14, but not to the consent agenda, is that correct? Or you wanna put it on the consent agenda?
We need to allow the board to have opportunity to have a conversation about
Okay,
it.
so put it on but not in the consent.
Yeah, but we can take action on it if necessary.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. All right, then we will discuss it at our meeting on Thursday. 5.4, residency enrollment center.
So discussion has occurred at facilities and in our ELT regarding utilizing our former administration building and moving residency enrollment, moving it there to make that a residency enrollment center. To include in that, we would also include ELL services. Oftentimes during enrollment time, ELL services are needed for our new families, and we thought we would move them over there as well. Dr. Cargill has also been able to she talked to Lincoln. They're going to provide free legal aid to our families, and so we wanted an office space for them as well, and we would put them at that, also at the former administration building. In addition to that, we've also talked about the loads of love, and I think we've heard about this where we would take those washer and dryers. I think is there 5 sets left?
There's 5 sets from last year, and we're due to get 6 more this year.
So the thought is that we would repurpose that building into also being where they could have a center for loads of love as well. So as our new families come in, they would get the services they need as far as enrollment. If they have ELL needs, they would get that at that same time. They would be welcomed also by saying if you need laundry services, then you certainly have that right here at this building as well. Part of that too is that we've always had Officer Dykstra there to be a part of that enrollment process whenever there's issues or problems. So we were concerned about not having some kind of security in that location, because that's been something we've always had in the past. So we did a little cost. We looked at utilities, about moving them over there. The utilities of the former administration building are actually tied to the entire Hickman campus, and you can't separate them. So when we get a bill for Millennium, Smith Hill, and the former administration building all wrapped up into one. We tried to pull it out, just kind of looking at the numbers. The cost is very negligible. I mean, the cost of running Hickman is enormous, obviously. It's a huge building with 2 schools. And the part running the former administration building is very small. So pulling that out would be a hard number to take. Plus, you've only got maybe 4 or 5 people that would be in this location. So their usage of utilities would be pretty limited. Insurance, I spoke with Trust, who was our broker. They said there would be pennies on the dollar of increase in premiums because our content, we already have content over there that we cover, and we have insurance on the building already for replacement costs. So he said you might raise it $50,000 of content, but he said literally then that could be dollars instead of hundreds of dollars. It could be a few dollars. So insurance would not be a huge effect. Custodial coverage, we would have to clean the building on a regular basis. So I put in for the lowest level of custodial work, which is a step 1 class 1 custodian for 20 hours a week. It's somewhere around $13,350, $13,380.50 per year, just for the cleaning aspect of it. The security part will actually be the highest cost of this. We had Sergeant Dykstra look out, and he looked at security. There aren't too many private security firms that will do this. They mostly work at corporate facilities and events. They generally don't like schools. They let the officers do that. We call it Securitas and Titan. Securitas's prices are actually higher than what we pay South Patrol now for our off-duty, so that was not an option. And so we have a hard time filling South Patrol, off-duty right now, so adding this to it, we didn't feel like it was an option, because the schools where the kids are is the priority. So Titan actually gave us a decent price. The hourly rates are listed there. Remember, it's 4 days a week. We don't enroll families on Wednesdays. So the security would only be needed on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and 8 hours on those days. So I put the hourly rate there. We have armed and unarmed for an hour, for a week, and for a year. The overtime rates there, I just don't think that'll ever be something we'll do, but I wanted to list them there just in case. They're uniformed officers. They have their own Titan security uniforms. The total cost of an armed, which we prefer to armed in this case, because that's what we've had in the past. Armed security officer for $42,744, with the custodian for that amount is roughly $56,124, and so that puts us at a 0.1% of the overall budget. So,
I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
I love the direction we're going with this. The Loads of Love, the registration. So you're asking the Board of Education basically to utilize a building that could be utilized. I mean, you're only getting, based on this, what is the utilization of this building going to consist of?
It would be what it is with this.
The utilization. We have some laundry,
Yeah, we have a laundry. We'll have to do a laundry facility.
right,
We'll have all enrollment
okay.
will be there. We'll have the legal aid piece there,
We
and
were talking about also possibly with the link, link coordinator.
Is
Yeah.
there any opportunities for us to generate any revenue and the additional space that's gonna be at the building? The unoccupied space?
again, that may be something we take up with Block Real Estate to say leasing or something, or I mean, it's certainly possible we can talk to them about.
How much is it gonna cost to retrofit the building to have the washers and dryers put in place?
The washer and dryers, well, it'll cost us probably a little under 25 to retrofit. Yeah, we need 2-inch drains, and we just have a handful of 2-inch drains. So I'd say somewhere between $10,000 and $25,000 would get us all that. So and that's a one-time cost that my budget could take, and we can do that in-house actually.
Any question?
I'll take it.
And you know, one thing that you didn't mention in there was the legal aid as well for our families, but that's gonna be
Oh, yeah.
provided by Link.
You have to watch which would be compatible for what's in there, because you don't have that, unless you do quite a, what would be compatible if you rented it out? What would you want to be in there where you have enrollment and that kind of thing going on?
Right.
What would be compatible? We lease it, it would be vacant, which has been, and I think we've had difficulty marketing it because of unless someone would take into account that they have to renovate it for their purpose, because this can't be used too much the way it is now. That's the thing, you know.
I'm just afraid that, I understand the big picture thing here, but, I mean, we are approving items, I think that require a little, strategic thinking behind it. I mean, we just mentioned another $25,000, that should be in, as part of retrofitting this place to do that type of work. I mean, I'm just really not there yet, on this.
I think you said that you could do this with the present staff.
Yeah, present staff could do it, and I throw the 25,000 because that's a worst case scenario. I think we can get it down between 10 and 15 pretty easily. There'll be some saw cut and things like that, but I think this is something we can do it in-house. I know our people can do it, so. And it's well within my budget for site improvements, so.
The district budget is struggling as it is. And the total square footage of that building is what again?
Total square footage of that building?
Uh-huh.
I have to look. Total square footage is 12,996.
12,000.
12,996.
And just for clarification for me, this would come, you said out of your budget?
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I would assume you want some further discussion on this, and I'll put it on consent. What's your pleasure?
We need some further discussion on this item. I just think that I understand the big picture here of creating, moving registration. I just think that it should be part, I wanna know which pillar this aligns with. Are there any future possibilities of renting some of that square footage out, to an outside agency where we can generate some funds or revenue? I mean, it can be, I don't know, I think there's some, if we put our heads together, I think we can maximize this opportunity.
Okay, that is our motion to approve, and, not put on consent. It's your pleasure. Not everybody at the same time.
I'll move that we approve but not put on, that we approve the moving of the residential enrollment office, ELL staff and free legal aid office to the former administration building with armed security 4 days a week starting January 6th of 2020, but that it not be moved to consent.
A second.
No, I have a no on it.
There's no stop.
Okay, I'll second it. Any further discussion or question? Okay, all in favor say aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay, the record show that 2 days and 1 day. All righty. 5.5.
So these next two items, board members, are just informational items. So no action or anything required tonight. So the first one, and I provided you 2 PowerPoints. First one is Grow Your Own Startup Teachers Grant. So we had kind of talked about this and shared that we had received this. So I wanted to just take a minute tonight and walk the board through the components of the grants that we wrote and submitted with DESE. So background information, DESE solicited applications this summer, and we submitted in August. We were notified that we received it on October 22nd. And then I just had last week our first kind of informational webinar with DESE. They started providing some initial guidance on the grant. What does it provide? It'll give us $10,000 in terms of seed money to start a comprehensive Grow Your Own program in the district. The funds don't have to be spent this year by the end of this year. Some can carry over into next fall, and they're fine with that based on the timeline, obviously, of the grant being issued. And then the state will also provide coaching and guidance to us during this time. We'll be assigned kind of a coach from DESE, and then also local coaches who have some experience in building Grow Your Own programs. The next pieces are just some key parts of the components that give you an idea of what does this mean, what does this look like. So there were 4 pieces: recruitment, preparation, partnerships, and evaluation. So the first part is recruitment. So one of the pieces we will begin is called the Hickman Teachers of Tomorrow, essentially like a Future Teachers of America group, except it'll be our own. And so we'll have one of those at Ruskin and one at Smith Hale. So it'll be after school student activity group that students can join that are interested in being a part of that. We'll use part of the grant to fund sponsorships of those, so extra duty pay like our teachers get that run after school activities. The goal of that is just to encourage the students to start exploring teaching careers, talk about how its importance to the community, give them a sense of what a career in teaching looks like. The second driving goal would be provide our students with unique opportunities. So university visits, going to schools of education, getting to talk to students who are in their undergrad as teachers, bringing people in to speak to them about the career and that path. And that part of the grant, we've designated $5,500 for the stipends for the teacher sponsors, and then $3,000 for student experiences. The next piece is preparation support. So once we get our kids engaged, how do we kind of keep connected to them when they graduate from Ruskin? And so part of that would be having district mentors who are assigned students. So if we have a group of 10 students who say are with us, and they're in an organization and they graduate and say, our undergrad's gonna be teaching. We assign mentors to them at Ruskin to stay connected with them as they go through their undergrad, so that there's this constant home-based connection for them to go to, whether it's about taking classes or papers they're writing, that they will come back here for all their clinical experiences, their student teaching experiences, so that they never lose that connection with Hickman Mills as they continue through their undergrad teaching. Working to provide employment opportunities, the students that are part of that, so whether that's us looking at some opportunities in the district for our students to help them with tuition costs, or looking at our partnerships with Link, Kansas City Public Library, Mid-Continent Library, about finding opportunities for them to earn extra funds as they prepare for college. And we've designated $4,500 for this part of the grant, $2,000 for our teacher mentors, and then $2,500 as a pool of money for student employment in the district. Partnerships is the next piece. We have partnered with Avila when we initially began this whole journey, and they have been a great partner in providing on-site classes at Ruskin, teacher ed undergrad. Connecting with Cerner is part of this, right? Yeah, we all smile as we say that. But we talked about how this would be an exceptional opportunity for them in terms of sponsoring our own students who will go to school, get a degree, and come back to our community to teach. Which, as an employer in the district, who would want the kids that are best educated teaching the kids that are going to be their future employees. So we're hopefully down the road framing that for them about how great of a partnership that would be for them, and ultimately as an employer, they're the beneficiary of that, of having great teachers in their classroom. And then pursuing a connection with the foundation, educational foundation. They already provide a level of student scholarships, so working with them and talking about how some of those can maybe be structured specifically for students who are going into teaching careers, so there would be a different way to honor them on a separate track. And then the evaluation piece, we'll be building a database, but that was part of the grant, tracking our students, who's a part of the program, what things do they participate in, who actually goes into teaching and comes back, just so we can determine what are we doing that's successful and what are we doing that's not, when it comes to really getting our kids excited about going into a teaching career. And the next steps will be creating an internal team and a stakeholder team in the district around the grant. I'll be working with our DESE coaches to develop an action plan, and then we'll be rolling all of these pieces out. And I put spring 2020, but some of it should start right after winter break. We'll start rolling out those pieces. Just a quick overview, just kind of like what all is a part of this grant that we just received if anyone should ask.
This is a $10,000 grant?
$10,000 grant, yes. They awarded 5 across the state. We were the only one on the west side of the state that got it. Jeff City was one, and then the other 3, 2 were in St. Louis, 1 was Cape Girardeau.
Okay.
So just an FYI.
Okay, and the 5.6, return substitute officers for the 2020-21 school year.
Yeah, so that's the other PowerPoint. So, Madam President, along with this committee, I kind of asked for some information, I believe in September, unless I provided in November or December, so we thought we would get this to you this month. So this is just kind of an overview and an informational item for the board, because we're in that space right now. So when we get done with tonight or on Thursday night, if there's additional questions that after this are still out there for board members, we can continue to research those and bring them to the December meeting, so that hopefully administration with the board is in a place to make a decision in December about how we move forward. So this is to open the door and kind of start giving you some information. So, background, we started, our first year with Kelly Services was at the beginning of the 14-15 school year. That change was triggered by changes that were coming forward in terms of the Affordable Health Care Act, and at that time we had consistently low fill rates that caused us to seek an outside provider. That next page, I do a look back clear back before we started with Kelly, so 13-14 was the last year that we did it on our own. And then I've captured 19-20 is just up until this point, actually through November 8th of what our fill rates. And so I did a separate capture for each one, the teacher fill rates each day or annually averaged, and then the overall fill rate. Because we also, the first year, our nutrition services was included. We removed them after that first year, so now it's our teaching staff, custodial staff, and clerical staff that Kelly provides substitutes for. So why are fill rates important? You know, as a former teacher and principal myself, I mean, this is some of the personal work I did at the elementary level. You know, when you don't have a substitute, more than likely you're going to divide that class up into other classes. And sometimes that can be at the grade level, depending on how many people are at that grade level, or usually it can be at other grade levels. You know, so students are missing out on that grade level content that the teacher left in terms of lesson plans, and then your other teachers end up with multiple students in their classrooms for that day that they really haven't prepped for. So when you don't have a sub, essentially it's a day of lost instruction when you don't have a substitute in the classroom. At the secondary level, how it looks most of the time is teachers figuring out the schedule, administration spending time in the morning to figure out who's going to rotate in and out on their plan time to cover those classrooms, so that teachers lose their plan time on those days. Unfilled absences also impact staff morale. I mean, it's something that we heard from staff and the union often when we had high unfilled rates about, you know, it's tough for them to operate when they plan for their class and then they have 8 more kids in there that day. They also get frustrated when they miss plan time. You know, that's a key part where they're supposed to be planning for instruction and reviewing data and all these things that we expect our teachers to do. And when they don't have that plan time, it's tough. So fill rates, high fill rates are important. Not just important for staff, but important for our kids. That next page, I kind of give you an overall picture. So we average a little over 15,000 positions that need to be filled annually. So I did just a 2-year look back on that. So last year we approximately needed 14,500 subs. 10,000 of those were teachers. The year before it was 16,000 positions, over 16,000 positions that needed to be filled, with almost 11,000 teacher spots. So that kind of helps just frame for you how many subs, you know, do we need on an annual basis. And for example, this week, the last 2 days, we've needed over 100 subs. Today, I believe, was 116 subs is what we needed today to fill all of our spots. Yesterday was 120 something.
So I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I look at the sheet here, maybe you can help me. So how many subs, we need how many subs today?
So today, I believe, was 116.
And what was the percentage of the fill rate today?
If you'll just give me a minute to log in. So today was 61%.
They filled 61%.
61%. Out of 100, we had a total of, today's the 12th, right? 114 subs needed, and they filled 63 of those subs.
And so what about yesterday?
Yesterday, we needed 116, and they filled 60% of
And they
those.
filled 6%. So, Casey, did we already pay for that 40% that wasn't filled?
No, we are only invoiced for whatever they fill. So those 44, so we needed 116, they filled 67, that is all we pay for. If
And
they
then-
don't fill it,
And
we
what,
don't pay.
and what is the cost savings that we've received today for them not filling certain, let's say an average of 50 positions a day?
Right,
thus
so,
far.
good question. So that's a question I'm gonna need Shelley to answer, because we talked about that this morning too at our cabinet meeting.
So
But
there
yeah,
could be a possible savings on a district from that, whatever millions of dollars we agreed to pay Kelly last year. We should have a significant savings if, I mean, we're almost at.
well, yeah, this is 2 days. I mean, obviously, these have been 2 huge days, and so the fill rate has been rough, but, you know, on average this year so far, we have had an 88% fill rate.
Oh, okay, I think I know where we're going with it. Okay.
Okay. So, in
Not
terms,
getting much better though, not getting much better, not getting much better in terms of, if we look at the data. Little difference, I guess, huh?
yeah, and month to month this year, we have seen an improvement, a 1% improvement each of the months. That, you know, we are higher than some of our neighbors right now. I mean, obviously, higher than Center, but we'll see what happens now that they've just increased their,
They just did a pay increase to $100 and
Yeah.
something dollars.
they
a
increased
day.
$24 a day,
Yeah.
yeah.
Significant increase.
Yeah.
And I have that on the next one. And so, you know, in terms of our pay, we're not up until Center. It's actually 120 for non-certified, and then they raised it 130 for certified. So their teaching positions are actually $130 a day. So that would be 25 to 83 more than us. But you can see with our other neighboring districts, we're positive on some, we're negative. We're not way off outside of Center now. We weren't way out of range in terms of what our daily rate is compared to our neighboring districts. But with Center, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that looks over the next month or so, if that impacts us, because they go through Kelly Services also.
Yeah, I see here on moving forward, Casey, that you put no later than December board meeting prior to the next year. I was just under the understanding that you would have some type of presentation for it. This is the presentation?
Yes. So this is the initial one, like I mentioned at the beginning, and then if other questions are still out there or things, that would provide us an opportunity to discuss it at the December 5th committee meeting for,
Listing, yes.
yes, a December 5th committee meeting that we could bring in more answer the questions to that committee meeting, so that hopefully it's something that come to the board in December.
Of all the other districts in comparison to ours.
Okay. Alright. Well, this is very helpful to have in advance, you know, being a little bit, when do we need to approve the Kelly Service contract? When is it usually? I don't have it in front of me.
Well, I think last year we took it in December. I mean, and so I provided the alternative option here of what it would look like if we decided to take on substitute services ourselves.
Okay.
So one of the things we would have to consider is staffing, because essentially we would need to add, 300 to 400 employees to the district payroll in terms of the pool. Because when you have a pool, your average acceptance rate is about in the 30 percentile. So if you have a high 38% yes rate on subs that you invite in, and knowing that we would need about 100 subs a day, we would need a pool of about 300 to 400 subs. So in terms of positions, the recommendation then would be to hire a human resources coordinator over substitute services, and that would be the administrative position who manages the monitoring of certificates, supervises and evaluates the substitutes. They would be in charge of recruitment of substitutes, because of course we have to be out recruiting side by side against Kelly, and handles investigations related to substitutes. And that person would work a normal 8 to 5 day. And the estimated cost for that would be $80,000 inclusive of salary and benefits. And then a substitute secretary, and that person would handle in terms of the district's absent management system, scheduling substitutes, making the calls each morning and afternoon to fill gaps in coverage, onboarding new substitutes, monitoring substitute payroll, and then they would be working from 5 a.m. to 1, because you would need someone here super early in the morning to start looking at what didn't get filled and making those calls. And that's an approximate cost of $55,000, and that's salary and benefits. And then additional costs that would shift to the district, one of the key pieces would be in terms of benefit costs. So right now, we don't have to monitor how many hours a sub works, because they don't work for us, they work for Kelly Services. We would have to be conscious of that when we did our own sub pool, so that we didn't have every substitute that works 5 days a week triggering benefits. On the other hand, we have long-term subs. We have people that go on leave, we have vacancies sometimes that need to be filled, and you don't want teachers switching out in those situations, because that's not good for kids. So in this proposal, we've estimated that at least 25 substitutes would probably trigger the need for us to offer them benefits. And so at that, at about a $9,000 cost, it's an approximate cost of about $225,000, because that would become our responsibility, not Kelly's. And then the last couple pieces are, we currently don't pay for the frontline absent management system, which is the software platform where people put in their absences. We would have to purchase that. So I got a quote from our frontline provider, and that would be $26,000. And then department work, they need some kind of working budget, so they're going to recruit and advertise and do those things. With the estimated $15,000. So shifting investment, the initial investment and ongoing in terms of salaries would be approximately $406,000. Looking at those pieces that we would have to get in place if we did take on the sub-services back into the district. And then that last piece is going into next year, it'd be our recommendation to review our daily rate, and really that would be true with or without Kelly. We'll see how much centers change impacts us in terms of our day-to-day fill rate, but probably need to revisit. And if we were taking on our own sub, we would probably want to be the highest paying to attract people away from Kelly to Hickman Mills as a substitute. Making sure we were higher than anyone else. I mean, that would need to be a key piece. Say, don't go to work for Kelly, come to work for Hickman Mills. We have the highest pay in order to kind of lure people away from them. Ultimately, our recommendation is that we continue to engage with Kelly Services for the 2021 school year. And I've kind of talked about it, I won't go through that list, because we kind of talked about those reasons why we went to them in the first place. And so moving forward, tonight, additional questions or that come up after tonight that we could bring forward any answers and continue having discussion at the Finance Committee meeting in December.
So we'd have our own pool to draw from.
Do we?
Would we have, under your proposal, would we have our own pool?
We would have to create our own pool. I mean, we don't have a teacher sub pool at all right now.
I know this was something that they brought up last year, and wanted some options.
Yeah.
So these are the options that Casey brought forth.
Okay, no further discussion there. I guess our future meetings, we know it's the 14th of November, that's the day after tomorrow, and then December 10th is this committee meeting will come again and meet again. And on the adjournment, we will not meet with the adjournment, we'll just adjourn. Anything else to come before that? Anything else? Well then, let the record show that it's 6:33, we will adjourn. Thanks all of you.